everyone, welcome back to the Open College podcast. My name's Oxana and I'm the host of the Open College podcast series. On this episode, Mary's back giving us all really useful interview tips and tricks. It's well worth a listen to for those who are job hunting or thinking of a change in jobs. So let's just get straight into it and listen to what Mary had to say.
Hi Oxana, it's great to be back again doing another podcast on another very important topic, I suppose, interview skills. So as everybody knows, I've been the career manager for the Open College for quite some time now, and I've carried out quite a lot of mock interviews with students, during classes, and I also recruit for the college as well. So I've got lots of experience conducting interviews, both face-to-face and I suppose recently the past year, because of COVID, I've been doing all interviews online as well. So I know what it's like, to conduct these interviews, but I also know what it's like being on the other end as well. And you know what it's like, once you get word of an interview, you start to panic, don't you really?
Yeah, you do.
You do. Like, instead of being excited for an interview, I know my stuff, I've studied this for so long, I've got so much experience in the subject, but yet you just panic. So I know what it's like being on the other end as well, of that, and the kind of lead up to it, and the thoughts kind of getting in the way of you doing well. So what is an interview? So an interview is basically, if you try to think of an interview as you're going to go and meet old friends or having a conversation with them about a job, so try to stop putting yourself, down, because the brain will tend to believe, what you think. So if you change the way of thinking, it'll improve your interview actually, and your nerves and the outcome as well. So try and think of the interview as going to meet a few friends, and you're going to talk about a job that you'd really love to do and how you can fit that job really well,
Okay.
So you're going to be talking to the interviewer about all the skills that really fit the job description that you're applying for, and what interviewers like to see, certainly with me anyway, is that you're going to be a good fit for the company as well. And the key to doing that is to research the company and work on your rapport building at the very start as well. So, don't be afraid to smile and, sit up straight and things like that. But we'll get into that in more detail later on. First of all, I suppose I want to talk about, why do we panic? So, Oxana, how would you have any idea, say if you get an interview, if you get a letter or an email to say you have an interview in 2 days' time, and you panic, what would you be panicking about? What would you be thinking about?
I'm a bad person to ask this, to be honest, because I don't panic about these kind of things. I just go with it. I suppose people probably, it's just the fear of being judged, isn't it? That you don't know something well enough, that maybe you don't give the right answer that they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So if you remember, we did the last podcast on presentation skills. It's very, very much the same, because you're presenting yourself really and in front of people. So it's that fear of being judged, and it's that fear of looking incompetent to to the interviewer. And it's that fear of, what if I forget, what I'm going to say? What if I stumble on my words? What if I forget, what, and it's just all, so straight away you're thinking about the things that's going to go wrong, aren't you, instead of the things that's going to go right.
Yeah, worst case scenario, how you can prevent it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the nerves and the anxiety that makes us doubt ourselves, and it's a very natural human reaction, but it's one that you can actually control to a point. And it's a case of trying to change the way your mind thinks of an interview. If you think you're going to do bad and panic, if you think that you're going to forget things, well, your brain is going to start believing that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, think that, okay, I'm actually going to do well. I'm excited about this interview. I'm going to tell them what I'm good at. So, if you use kind of positive affirmations like this every day, your brain will actually start to believe it. Mm-hmm. And, straight away you're going to do much better at interview. It is a very natural human reaction. If you remember, I spoke about how the brain works. So yes. If the brain senses a threat, that part of the brain, the amygdala, kind of goes in fight or flight mode. So it cuts off your rational thinking part of your brain, the part that you really need to do well at the interview. Mm-hmm. So the key to relax that part of the brain down and to get that rational part thinking again is to relax as much as you can before an interview. I know this is it's easier said than done, isn't it?
I was just going to say, it's very easy to say relax, but if you're stressed, You're stressed,
If you're stressed, you're stressed, and a certain amount of stress is fine. Stress and nervousness shows that you actually care as well. Mm-hmm. So a certain amount of stress and anxiety is completely normal. I know I still get a bit anxious, if there's, if I'm even teaching a class or, doing an interview and stuff like that. So a certain amount of nerves and stress is okay, but it's when it actually prevents you from thinking properly. That's when you need to intervene yourself, and it's about sort of taking control of yourself and thinking of this stress and anxiety as a bully, and just saying to that bully, just go away, I'm not going to let you win here. Mm-hmm. So it's taking back control. So it's doing things like doing a short meditation beforehand. 10-15 minutes before your interview, just sit down, find a meditation that you're comfortable with, and that really relaxes the brain down, and it makes you focus better, on what you're going to do as well. The 7-11 breathing technique as well is really, really handy, and this works for everybody. So when you breathe into the count of 7, and you breathe out to the count of 11, and that automatically relaxes your body. Mm-hmm. Your body doesn't really have any choice but relax. So the longer you breathe out, it triggers the parasympathetic part of your body, the relaxing part, and it naturally relaxes down. Other people find going for a nice walk outside for 10 minutes really calms them down. Other people find just, sitting just peacefully in their chair, maybe even reading a magazine, just something completely that'll take your mind off an interview beforehand. So whatever it is that works for you, that's going to relax, do that just before an interview. And I guarantee it won't get rid of the nerves 100%, but even if it gets rid of 20% of them, 30% of them, it's going to help a bit, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Whatever helps you, do it.
Yeah. And another crucial factor to remember before an interview is the sooner you start preparing for the interview, the more confident you're going to be. So as soon as you receive that letter or email, inviting you for the interview, start your preparation that day. Even if the interview is a couple of months away, it's never too early to start preparing for it. Think how confident you'll be, if you start researching the company and, preparing your questions so far in advance. And, the more you prepare, the less chance there will be of going blank, or forgetting information during an interview as well. So the more you're prepared, the more confident you're going to be, the less, you're not going to have that mind blank, and you're not going to panic as much. So how do we prepare? So one of the things when I'm interviewing people, Oxana, is I want to find out what they know about the company. Because it's happened so many times at interview that, I would ask somebody during the interview, like it wouldn't be the first question, so this would come near towards the end of the interview. Okay, so I've asked most of the, competency-based questions and general, questions. So what actually do you know about the company? Why do you want to work here?
Mm-hmm.
And there's loads of times I kind of get a blank, sort of, I can see a blank expression on their face, or sort of a very, very short answer. Okay, so, and then what this is telling me is that this person just thought to themselves, okay, I'm just going to apply for all these different jobs and hope for the best. If I get an interview, that's brilliant. Mm-hmm. So they're not really thinking about the companies that they want to work for, or they're just saying to themselves, I'm just going to apply for these companies and hope for the best. If I get an interview, that's great. So that doesn't come across very well. It's not telling me that you chose the Open College because we do this, and this, and you want to be involved with our team, and you want to be involved with this that we're doing, and you find what we're doing in this area very, very interesting. So do you know what I mean there, Oxana? Does that make sense?
Oh, no, definitely. But then I also kind of want to say, I don't think there's maybe anything wrong with applying to loads of places, because, some people might just need the job. But the smart thing would be then is keep a track of where you're applying, because if they get back to you, then you can do your research instead of just showing up,
oh, yeah,
not knowing anything.
Look, there's absolutely there's no problem with applying for a whole load of jobs. And, I would assume that's what everybody's doing. But the difference is they're not researching. Like if they do get a call for interview, they're not researching enough.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Do your due diligence.
Yeah. They're not putting enough thought into it. So the best way to find out about the company is to go online. Every company should have a website. Have a look at their departments, how many departments are there, look at all the different services they provide, look to see if they're involved with any charities. You can talk about that. You can say, I see that you're involved with such and such a charity, I would love to help you with that. Mm-hmm. You can talk about then your experience with that if you have it. Have a look at their mission statement, their values, their ethos, and have a look for what they do for their employees as well. Because a lot of companies would have they would focus on their employees a lot now as well, so it's very important for you sort of to know what they do for their employees as well. And I mean, if you can talk about all of this, not just so you've been around for like 10 years and you do this and this, that's not enough. You need to be able to talk much more than that. You know what I mean? So you kind of know, all right, this person has done their research, like they know quite a bit. And I can see that their qualities and their values fit ours as well, So that's one thing. So you prepare, so you find out as much about the company. Go on LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn's brilliant. I mean, every company should have a LinkedIn profile. Like even before an interview, you can contact a few people on LinkedIn that works for that company. Say you have an interview coming up, is there anything, you can tell me about the company, that would help with the interview. If there's any specific questions you want to find out, you can ask people and stuff like that. So that would really help as well. And a lot of people actually do that. And another important point to remember when preparing for an interview is to make sure that you know your CV or the application form that you filled out. Because sometimes, when people fill out application forms and do out CVs, they put things in that's not necessarily 100% true, that they think that, it's going to impress the company. And loads of times I would ask somebody, okay, so I see you have really good, say, for example, teamwork skills. Can you give me an example of a few examples of when you used good teamwork skills? And, you would see them kind of stumbling over this, and, you would see straight away then that, what they put down in their CV, or what they put down in their application form isn't really true, because if it was, they'd be able to talk more about it. Mm-hmm. And, I've noticed that quite a lot of the times when I'm interviewing, I'd ask about it. It's okay listing skills, but if you can't provide examples of how you use these skills, it's a waste of time putting the skills down in the CV or the application form. So it's very, very important. Know your CV inside out. Make sure that you can expand on each point that you put down, and be able to provide different scenarios and things that you were involved in before that'll prove that you're actually very, very good at these skills. And qualifications as well. I've had people that have obviously lied on their CV and put qualifications down that they didn't complete because they weren't able to talk about it, and things like that. So just make sure that everything that you're putting down is true and that you know all the information inside out. And then the next point to remember when preparing is to really practice your interview questions. The key is to stand out with your answers and not just sound like every other interviewee. Try to think of the likely questions that you'll be asked, and then work on your answers, and then practice. And the more you practice your questions, the more likely they will just flow off your tongue. Practice your answers with friends or family. Record yourself using your mobile phone. This can be quite educational, as you can see yourself on the way, the interviewer will see you as well. Maybe you didn't realize, maybe you touch your hair a lot, maybe you scratch your face a lot and stuff like that. So these are, little things that you wouldn't know if you didn't sort of record yourself and watch yourself back. I know that a lot of my students find this highly beneficial when they're recorded and they watch themselves back. They can see what they need to, well, first of all, what they're doing well, and second of all, what they need to work on, to make improvements. But the more you can practice your questions, the better. And there are general questions that, you're going to be asked. So, you would start off like, tell me a bit about yourself, or, talk me through your CV. So, have a good concrete, answer together for that. And then I find generally once the interviewee answers this question, they can sort of get into a flow, and they answer the other questions a lot more easy. So have that question prepared well in advance, and that'll make sort of the rest of the interview go a bit better. Make sure you gather all necessary documentation the employer will need well beforehand as well, because if you do well in your interview, they're going to be looking for these documents more or less straight away, certificates, and your qualifications especially. And have your references ready as well, Oxana. Make sure that any job that you're applying for, that your references know that you're applying for these jobs as well, so they're not caught off guard when they're called, if you do well, because references can either make or break your application.
That's true.
So, many times I've called references and they haven't obviously been prepared at all. They've been really caught off guard. And then, they don't give us well a reference. So always make sure that you have your references prepared. Another important point is, find out how many people is going to be on the panel as well, the interview panel. And then practice talking to that number of people, making sure to keep eye contact with them and everything. Whatever person's asking the question, answer them, giving them the most eye contact, but always include the other ones. Always look at the other ones as well on the panel. And, don't be afraid to smile. Smiling creates rapport, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would agree.
And they warm to you easier as well. So yeah, I think that's as much you can do when, in preparation. If you really research the company, what they do, what they believe in, find out everything that they do, find out as much about the company as possible. Rehearse your questions, know your CV inside out, and have your documents and your references ready.
And what types of interviews can somebody do?
Well, there's many types, yeah. So there's many types of interviews depending on what job you're going for. And I suppose the traditional interview is the most popular one, where you have the people in charge of recruitment having an interview with you, which consists of only, one or two people on the panel. And this can be a bit more personal, and people generally feel a lot more comfortable in these types of interviews. as there's not as many people to impress. So that's the traditional interview, and I know that, for some of the roles at the Open College, 1 or 2 interviews is fine. You get a number of people applying, and then you whittle it down to a certain number, and then you would have the first kind of traditional interview, and you get it down to maybe 5 or 6 candidates, and then you would move it on then to the second round of interviews, where you would be finding out sort of more specific details, and you'd be going more in depth about their skills, and their fit, to the company as well. So that would be a more kind of traditional way of doing it. With the bigger companies now, you could have quite a number of interviews. You could have up to 5 or 6 interviews. So you could start off with a telephone interview, where so these interviews takes place, as the first port of call for some employers to see if you fit the job. All right.
Yeah.
So you would need to prepare sort of normally as a normal interview and have the exact same questions prepared. They're not going to go into as much detail on a phone interview, but it's just to kind of get the general gist of what you're like. And then this could move on then to an interview with HR, okay? And then they'll be asking you sort of all the same kind of questions, but more details. So, a bit about your background, your experience, your qualifications, and how you're going to fit with the company. They might ask you some competency-based questions as well. And this is where, they're interested more in your experience. They want to see if you've got the exact experience and skills that they're looking for. And they're going to be looking for loads and loads of different scenarios and examples of when you showed these skills, teamwork, communication skills, persuasion skills, etc. And then this could move on then to having an interview with your manager and certain people in the department. And then again, they'll be looking to see if you're going to fit really well with their team, and again, they're going to be going into even more depth about your skills and more scenarios and more examples that you can provide. And then, if you do well at this, then that moves on to even having another maybe interview with a manager that's higher up in the company. And this usually happens because some higher managers just want to meet all the people that's going to work there, and they'll have the final say, if they feel the person is going to fit well. And of course, they're going to have all the feedback from, the other managers in the HR department and things like that. So they'll take all of that information into account, plus their own interview, and they'll make a decision on that. And then, there's some companies that have 5 or 6 interviews, and this moves on through all different kind of managers and different higher up managers and everything. So it can be quite a long process sometimes, but generally the traditional interviews are still quite popular, the first interviews and then the second interviews and maybe a third interview. However, one of the main sort of interviews that I've been carrying out anyway since lockdown is the virtual interviews. Mm-hmm. And I think all interviews have moved online now. Like you can't really go and you
can't escape it.
You can't escape it really. So they're fast becoming the norm. The pandemic has really forced companies to now conduct all interviews online. I've noticed that candidates can be quite uncomfortable. During the first interview, the same nerves are going to be there. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's added is they can see themselves on the screen. So that's really uncomfortable. So, naturally enough, you want to kind of, look at, you want to look well, you want to see that you're coming across well. So, instead of looking at the camera, you're actually looking at yourself a lot. Mm-hmm. So straight away that takes away from the rapport building because you're not looking, you're not making eye contact with the interviewer. So I notice a lot of people are looking at themselves. So what I would highly recommend is to turn that camera off, that little square that you can see yourself in the corner. Just turn that off. So there you're not going to be distracted and looking at yourself in the corner. you know.
And how do you find it? What would be better, the virtual interview or face to face?
Well, I mean, I think face-to-face interviews are brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get a certain, connection with the person.
Yeah, you get a feel for them, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of get more of a feel for the person, and there's that connection there. Whereas online, the virtual way of interviewing, you don't really get as much sort of rapport and connection with the person.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be the main difference there. But look, I've had really, really good interviews online as well. That I felt really connected to the person. So, the virtual interviews can be very good as well. So look, some useful tips I can recommend to present yourself well during the interview is, look presentable, dress appropriately from top to toe. So that means don't just dress at the top only and have a pair of PJs on at the bottom.
I was going to say that's roughly what people do. Blouse on top and pajama bottoms with Winnie the Pooh on them on the bottom.
Well, you see, look, it's happened for me before that, I've been interviewing somebody and, life happens, like, a pet has jumped up on the laptop. Mm-hmm. And then the person has got up to grab the pet, and then the next thing I can see the whole, the PJs underneath. Now, like, I find that, I find it funny and I can move on from that, but I can just imagine that, a lot of companies wouldn't find that.
Oh, yeah, especially if you get somebody really conservative and it's a really serious company, and they probably start thinking, oh, Jesus, if this person has an interview, or not an interview, even like a meeting, say, with a client, and this is what happens, and oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they think, oh gosh, this person hasn't prepared at all. So first of all, lock any pets outside the room you're going to be doing the interview in. Mm-hmm. Because they could start making noise, dogs can start barking and things like that. So, make sure that they're well out of the way so that doesn't, disrupt your interview. But make sure that you're dressed from top to toe, just in case something does happen that you have to get up quickly. You look professional the whole way down rather than just the top half. Mm-hmm. Mind your background as well. So whether it's your virtual background or your own background, always have the virtual background if you're using it that way as professional, like, no beaches in the background, no kind of bars or, parties or balloons or something like that. It's not very professional, So have like, a professional background, and there's loads of things that you can choose from, on these virtual platforms, loads of different backgrounds. If it's your own background, if you're not going to use it virtually, just just have it nice and decluttered. Don't have a lot of stuff going on at the back. Maybe have a nice plant behind you, a nice picture behind you. Just something that doesn't just look like there's so much going on and you can't really focus on the person at all. You're just seeing all this stuff going on at the back, and yet you can't really see the person. So get rid of all the clutter. Just have one or two things in the background, and that's perfect.
You're going to laugh at me now, actually, because my home office has UFC posters on the walls.
UFC posters.
Yeah, my partner's really mad into the UFC, so for a long time he was going to like UFC events in Vegas, and a lot of these posters are signed by the fighters that are there. So it's not like just a poster for the sake of a poster. It's like a signed memorabilia type thing. But I have those on the walls, so every time I'm on a Zoom call or something like that, I just blur out my background so people don't see.
And I mean, that's it. And look, it depends on, like, say for example, if your partner was going for an interview, for something UFC related or something to do with that, I mean, that's perfect. So it's all about work in the background to,
that's it.
Be like, and you have the option of blurring as well. But it's professionally, it would be great just to have it as decluttered as possible, and having it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just so you can focus on the person more. And then the next point is noise and distraction. So make sure there's no distracting noises in the background. Like a washing machine. I myself, I always make this mistake of turning on the washing machine in the morning, and then realizing when it's too late, oh no, I have a meeting or I have an interview and the washing machine's on and you can't stop. Well, you can stop it, but I don't like doing that.
Yeah. Oh, the amount of times I had to call somebody and I'm like, I'm sorry, that's the washing machine at the back.
That's the washing machine.
But that's only you guys, though. I wouldn't do it for, if I'm going into an interview or something, like a meeting with an external something or other, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. So, you just make sure not to have, anything that's going to cause any noise on. And then, we spoke about it earlier, pets, dogs barking, cats jumping around.
Yeah.
And things like that. And, never do your interview in a public area either, like at a restaurant or in a public area, because that's just a no-no.
I would agree.
It's too noisy, It's just way too noisy. There's always, the noise from people moving around. And in cafes and restaurants, there's plates, there's cutlery, there's all this noise in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I've had interviews like that before. I tried to interview people and it's very, very difficult. It's very distracting. So, always.
It's platform.
And a very, very, and in your own home preferably, or in a very quiet area.
Mm-hmm.
And then try not to have the camera too close to you as well, Oksana, because I've had sort of situations where, I'm interviewing somebody and all I can see is their head and they're very, very close up to the camera, and that doesn't really work because I'm not, it just doesn't work. You need to see the top half. You need to see your shoulders at least, and the top half of your body and your head, like not just the head alone, because that just doesn't work. And then make sure that your audio is working properly, and you can hear one another. So always make sure that your speakers are working properly and your volume is also working properly. Mm-hmm. Because it can take ages to try and get these things to work properly, and if you don't have it prepared beforehand, it can really take away from the interview at the start. And of course your interview speed as well, make sure it's suitable for the interview. So I suppose depending on what area you're in, make sure that your internet speed is up to speed really, mm-hmm. for the interview, and that everything's working fine, and that you can you can do your interview without it slowing down. And I mean, sometimes this does happen and it's completely normal. Mm-hmm. The internet speed can't be guaranteed all the time, but make sure, for example, if you're in an area and the internet's very slow and there is a risk of the internet cutting out, well, find somewhere else that you can do it, that the speed is guaranteed to be there the whole time, and just do it that way. Yeah, and again, I have to reiterate, like, once you're happy with your position on the screen, really don't pay too much attention to yourself on the screen. Don't look at yourself, turn that off completely. Pay the full 100% attention to your interviewer. Make eye contact with the camera, so it looks like you're making eye contact with the interviewer. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look professional at all if you're constantly looking at yourself. And again, it results in broken rapport with the interviewers. That rapport is it's key at the start. So if you break that at the very start, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the interview. Have contingency plans. So if you're using your laptop and the interview breaks down there, have your phone beside you so you can log in again using your phone, iPad, tablet. Have one or two of these as a backup, just in case anything happens to your laptop. And then other than that, Oksana, the same rules apply as a face-to-face interview. Research the company, practice your questions, make sure you have lots of examples you can provide for the skills that they're looking for. Be confident with your answers. Avoid waffling. Know your CV inside out, and So it's and hopefully these tips and tricks should help with any future interviews that anybody has coming up, because it probably will be virtual interviews. So hopefully those tips will help you with that. The next type of interview as well that a lot of the bigger companies would do is they would use elevator pitches. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, Oksana?
I've heard of them. I've never actually had to do one, so I'm not very familiar of them. It sounds very corporate America, though. I don't know if that happens here in Ireland.
Yeah, well, so a few of the larger corporate companies would use elevator pitches, and so it involves pitching sort of to an audience for approximately maybe up to a minute, 30 to 60 seconds, about who you are, what makes you unique. And then, people also use them at career fairs, when they're introducing themselves to employers as well. If you go to a career fair and you want to talk to an employer, you want to kind of know, right, what exactly am I going to say to them? Networking events, online profiles on your LinkedIn account, so it could actually help with that as well. So look, a few things. The first thing is just not to panic, because I know it's just like a presentation again. You're standing, you're in front of people, you're presenting in front of people, but it's very, very short. So don't panic. Try to relax. Have a think about, what you want people to know about you, like what makes you unique, and why would you be a good fit for the position.
Okay.
Focus on problem solving as well. So, the employer has a problem, and that, they need a specific, position filled. Like, how are you going to fix that problem? How are you going to fit into this position very well, to fix any problem that they have? Try to engage with your audience so you can talk, but you can also ask a question to get them interested. And try not to waffle on about irrelevant information. So first of all, I think it's like maybe 3 simple steps. So the first, you introduce yourself. For example, hi, my name is Mary, so lovely to meet you, and have a smile, that creates rapport. And then talk about what you do. So I'm, say, for example, a social care worker. So, I'm a social care worker, driven and hardworking, working for 8 years, say in the intellectual disability or foster care area, and then explain what you want to do. I'd love the opportunity to show, my skills or expertise in these areas. And, I find the work that you do for your clients admirable, and very impressive. And I would love to be involved in this and, work for a very well-established organization like yourselves. And, I, would love for the opportunity to, to show my skills and things like that. So you're really, really focusing down on, what makes you unique, creating that rapport at the start. Again, talking about the skills, how you would fit into that company, and being very pleasant about it as well. Having the smile on your face, and having the open body language as well. And speak naturally as well. I always say to people to slow it down. Talk a bit slower than you normally would.
I find that hard, though. I don't know if other people are it would be in the same situation as I am, but I know when I get nervous, I talk fast anyway, I find. But
yeah,
in an interview situation like that, I think I would the speed of the talking would go up a notch, definitely.
And that's what you say yourself, Oxana. It's just down to nerves, and it's a very natural thing that happens. Like, you speed up because of nerves, and you want to get this answer out as quickly as possible, because subconsciously you just want to move on and get this interview over.
Yeah.
But with practice, and I notice, like, when I'm doing mock interviews and when I'm teaching students, like, the more practice they get with it, the more comfortable they become with it, and they naturally slow down their way of talking. So again, it's all about the practice. It's all about the practice. Slow it down, makes it easier to understand for the employer. Express your confidence and try and make it memorable and interesting. Say how they can solve a problem that they have. How are you unique compared to every other candidate that's going to be coming in? Try and sell your uniqueness.
Yeah.
And And then I suppose the stages of the interview then, I just wanted to talk about, the different stages. So the opening, so there's 3 main stages. So the first stage is the opening. So this is where, say, for example, you're going to an attendance interview. So you enter the room and they put, their hands out to shake your hand. You make sure to give them a firm handshake, not too tight and not too loose, just a firm handshake and not for too long. Like I've had loads of cases where, people come in for interview and they're nervous and they're holding my hand, shaking it for too long,
Yeah.
So again, it's about practice again. Practice doing a firm handshake with somebody that you know. And then what happens then is the interview will introduce themselves and any others on the panel. They will explain maybe how long the interview will last. And this is for virtual interviews as well. So it's about, introducing themselves. We're looking forward to talking to you today. They'll explain how long the interview will last. They might give a bit of background of what the company does and what you're going to be talking about today. And the reason that the employer will talk about maybe 5-10 minutes at the start is to get you to relax a bit as well. All right. So that's the reason they'll talk quite a bit at the start, is to get you to relax into the interview so that you're not sitting down and you have to answer questions straight away. Professionally, that's what most interviewers should do. And they shouldn't just go straight into asking questions. They should talk about at the start. Now, while you're sitting there, try to focus on the way you're coming across. So have a slight smile on your face. Try to look relaxed as possible. Try not to be, biting your lip or, just looking nervous. Try to look as relaxed as possible. And the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed the actual interviewers will be, and then the more relaxed that the interview will go. And that's how you work on your rapport at the start. So smile as soon as it starts. Make that eye contact. Have an open posture. No folded arms or looking sort of uncomfortable. If there's more than one person on the panel, make sure to make eye contact with everyone. At the start as well, and I would say this online is, for anybody that wears makeup, don't wear too much makeup, because again, that distracts from the actual interview. And, I know, with the virtual interviews as well, be careful what you wear. Try and look as professional as possible. Try and have, a nice shirt on, a nice blouse, and wear colours. I noticed that nice bright colours really stand out. Pinks and blues, and greens and nice pastel colours that kind of, really, really stand out.
I find people overthink a lot about what to wear to an interview, because it also kind of comes into, well, I think anyway, it's just my opinion, kind of hand in hand with like maybe the culture of the company. So some places are more formal, some are very casual. Like I know in our office, like I sometimes waltz in like leggings and a dress. Do you know, like it's other people wear slacks and a shirt. I think it just kind of depends on how your office goes as well.
It depends on how your office goes, and a good tip, especially, and we will get back to attendance interviews. We're not going to be in this pandemic forever. So like, one of the first things that I would say as part of preparation for an interview is find out their dress sense. Go and have a look. Maybe go and have a look at the building, have a look at the people walking in and out, like what are they wearing, what do they wear on a daily basis, and then just wear the same kind of thing to the interview.
Yeah. And worst scenario, like worst comes to worst, just Google it. There is nothing wrong with just showing up in like black slacks and a blouse. That's fairly regular everywhere, I would say.
Absolutely. And I would just try and maybe put a bit of colour in there. I find that really stands out as well. It makes you stand out if you insert a bit of colour. You can't remember people a bit better if, because the first impressions really do count, Oxana. Like that first, the impression that you get of somebody coming in. Like most employers will make their first decision about, will this person fit into the company within the first 30 seconds to a minute of the interview, so the clothes that you're wearing is quite important and can have a huge effect on their decision as well. Well, not on the overall decision, but on the overall like first impression. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say subconsciously it would stand out.
Yeah, subconsciously it would stand out. So put a bit of effort into what you're going to wear, and just in my personal view anyway, and inject a little bit of colour. Something that's really gonna.
I showed up to our interview wearing all black, Mary.
I can't remember.
I must have done something to stand out. That's gas.
You must have done something right, but that was what, over 3 years ago. So
a long time now, yeah.
Yeah, my memory doesn't serve me good there. And then smile as much as you can. That creates a warmness. With the interview. So look at, if you can kind of get that right at the opening, it's going to bode well for the rest of the interview. So that's the opening, and then you have the middle. So middle of the interview, this is when the real questioning begins. So they usually start off with a low-key question to try and relax you even more into the interview. So it's either tell me a bit about yourself or talk me through your CV. All right. So if you have these questions well prepared beforehand, it's going to really help you kind of get into the interview. So that question about tell me about yourself, people panic about that question, don't they?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because it's, you see, tell me about yourself, but like professionally, not, hi, my name is Oxana, I am, I don't know, 21 again, and I like, I don't know, lilies or something. It's more like your educational background, your professional background, and maybe some things that you do in your spare time that would kind of tie into those things.
Yes,
maybe,
exactly. Yeah. So it's as you say, it's a very general question. So people kind of get confused. Geez, where do I start here? Like what where do I start? What am I supposed to say? And as you say, it's the more professional part that we're looking for. Yeah. So what I would suggest is you should focus on the most relevant experience and qualifications for the role, and the answer should be no more than 3 minutes long, right? So you don't want to have a big, long, drawn-out answer which takes up half the interview. I mean, that was the mistake I was doing when I was starting off. Many years ago, interviewing, when I would attend an interview, my goodness, I'd have a whole big, long speech about myself and all, and, it would take up too much time. So, you don't want to bore the interviewer either. And what you forget as well is, you don't want to take up too much. If the interviewer says the interview is going to last a half an hour, you want to kind of time it in your head as well. Right, okay, I'll only spend a couple of minutes, on this question. Because the interviewer usually has loads of people to get through on a day. So you really don't want the interview to be drawn out. So start off talking about maybe when you began having an interest in whichever field you're applying for. And then talk about the relevant courses and the experience you have. So, for example, if you're applying for a childcare role, for example, and you're at the interview, a good way to answer this, tell me about yourself. So, I began having an interest in childcare, since I started babysitting, my nieces and nephews for the past 3 years. I decided that I wanted to do it professionally, so I registered for the childcare course with the Open College and completed the course within a year. I thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of the course, especially mention some specific modules like, special needs or something like that, child development or something like that. So, you can get into detail about more specific modules there. Mention that, I did particularly well at work placement. My supervisor gave me excellent feedback. I consider myself to be an experienced childcare specialist at this stage, with extensive knowledge of the childcare industry. I developed some activities for, maybe some sensory learning for children. And I'm always eager to learn new methods. And, I enjoy working with children, but also families. as it's important to make them feel at ease and so on. And then you would end up saying, I want to work for a well-established, trusted childcare organisations like yourself. I would consider it a great opportunity to perfect my skills and gain some more invaluable experience. So there you go. So, you're starting off talking about when your interest started, and then you're talking about the relevant courses and experience you have, and then what you actually want to do, what your plans are. So that's telling the company all about you and how you would fit into the company straight away in 3 minutes.
Yep.
So you see how that can work?
Oh yeah, no, there's a formula to it. You just have to know it.
Yeah, exactly. And 3 simple steps there, really. And then talk me through your CV. So that's the 2 main areas. Tell me about yourself, or talk me through your CV. That's the 2 main ways an interviewer is going to start out. So again, this question is asked to give you the opportunity to talk through your relevant experience and qualifications. And again, keep it to the 3 main points. Like, so say for example, if you were going for an interview for a job in healthcare, so you would start off talking about how you got started. So after completing my Leaving Cert back in 2010, I started to work as a receptionist in a local care home. I observed how much carers did for the elderly, which made me want to work in the same profession. And then I had to look after my own grandparents and so on. So you're talking personally about that. And then so you researched courses and came across the QQI Level 5 in healthcare, and believed, and I believe it's one of the best things I ever did. I thoroughly enjoyed, the modules, and then you would talk about specific modules that you really enjoyed. You would talk about the 150 hours work placement you did in the care home, talk about the things you did there and the things that you really enjoyed. And then the reason that you're applying for the job is because it offers full-time hours and there are more opportunities for growth. And I'd also, be proud to work for, again, a well-established care home like yourself, who may have won maybe best care home in Dublin for the 3rd year running or something like that. So if you can bring in something like that, it goes to show that you've really researched the company as well. That they've won special awards for certain things, and they might specialize in certain things, and you can say that you want to be involved in that. So you can see how you can bring all of that together. And then we come to the closing of the interview. So you have answered all the questions that they have asked. So the interviewer will then usually ask you if you've got any questions. So professionally, you really should have 1 or 2 questions prepared here, because I always find it not very nice if you ask somebody, do you have any questions, and they say, no, not really. When you compare that to if you've got any questions, oh yeah, I just have 1 or 2 questions, that goes to show that they have more of an interest in the job, like they have more of an interest in the company itself and the role and things like that. You know what I mean? It just comes across a lot better.
Yeah. Because I think we can all agree that everybody is looking for a job to get paid. Look, that's just the facts of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also want to be working with like where you are interested in, if that makes sense, or somewhere that you think would be a good place for you. So that's kind of what you want to portray.
Yeah, definitely. So how you could just chime in there is, can you describe to me a typical day at the job? Can you describe what who I'd be working with, the kind of things I would be expected to do in a typical day and stuff like that. So that usually gives the employer a lot of things to talk about. Another question you can ask is, and I suppose this ties in with what can the employer do for you, is, what training opportunities do you have available at the company? Like a lot of companies do have huge training and development departments. So you can ask, what training would be specific to your role. Another question would be, what are the future plans for the company in the area that you're going to be working in? And then they usually get very excited about that as well, because every company has future plans that they're excited about, so they can talk away about that as well. And you look excited about their suggestions and things as well, and that'll work on their rapport even more.
Mm-hmm.
And
you
then
could chime in and say how you could help with the future plans if you see a link in there somewhere, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. And then you can finish by asking them, when you can expect to hear back. Will it be a phone call? Will it be a letter? Will it be an email? And then you can thank them for their time and say that you look forward to hearing from them. And if it's an attendance one, don't forget to give them that firm handshake again before you go. Don't just run out the door, because I know that's how you feel. Phew, that's so tight.
Yeah, you can relax now.
But don't forget just to wrap up everything, that firm handshake, and just say, yeah, I'll talk to you soon. All right, and just one more point. So, what are you going to do after the interview? So, look, try not to worry if you don't hear back from the employer on the exact day that they said they would contact you. I know that I'm guilty of this myself, and it's very simply because work gets in the way and you're very, very busy. Or some of the people that you planned to interview cancelled, and you had to reschedule interviews. Therefore, you had to move things forward and everything. So please don't panic if you don't hear back from the employer on the promised day. If it's going on and say after maybe a week and you still haven't, heard from them after the day they promised, well then contact them. And just say, talk to the receptionist, talk to somebody there, and ask, I had an interview there, 2 weeks ago. I'm just wondering, when I'll hear word back. And then, that they can take it from there. So, you're totally entitled to do that. But there's no problem with that at all. But I think just don't dwell, on things like, geez, I forgot to say that, or I didn't answer that well, or geez, my mind went blank. Don't dwell on these things at all. Most of the time the employer, they don't notice. Like they really don't notice. So try not to dwell on these things and don't fret. Just take your time, and if you don't get the job, think about all you've learned from the interview, and think that you've had some excellent practice for your next interview.
Well, that's it. It's good experience.
Yeah, it's a good experience. And ultimately, look, if you practice interview questions, do your research, deliver your answers concisely, get some interesting conversations going with the interviewer. There's no reason why a job interview can't be a pleasant experience, and you learn from every single job interview you go to. So even, the attempts that didn't get you that job. So just keep practicing the techniques. And, eventually you'll become even more confident, and the job will be yours.
And that was Mary with interview tips and tricks. I hope you took something away from this podcast that would be useful to you. As always, you can find us on our usual social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and listen to us on all your usual podcast platforms. That's all for now, you guys. Goodbye.